Are there advantages to aging? Yes, I am Debbi-Jo Horton, and welcome to Advantages to Aging. Join my guests and I as we discuss aging and what makes for a healthy lifestyle, which results in a quality life. Thank you for joining me today. Hey, listeners, welcome back to another episode of Advantages to Aging. And today I have with me Amy O'Rourke, who's an author of The Fragile Years and the owner of O'Rourke and Associates. And if you are an adult child beginning to have to help your parent, you definitely want to stay tuned in. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Let's dive right in, shall we? So let's start with the common mistakes that most adult children make when they start helping their parents. What are some of those that we should be aware of?
First thing I think about is the adult children, for very valid reasons, move at a faster pace in terms of decisions than the older adult is ready for. And I'll give you an example. They will come in and mom and dad need a little bit of help and they'll want to start with 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the older adults, no. So you're going to start smaller and go more slowly. The other is I like to umbrella it with the issue of control. And there are times in life and in places and professions where control is a very, very good thing. Helping your parents, it can work against you. If you have a orderly, systematic way that you want them to behave or decisions to be made, it rarely works that way because it's messy. Taking care of your parent is messy, it's unpredictable, it's uncertain. The other mistake, and this is a big one, and I hear this talked about a lot, and when it's mentioned, the hair stands up in the back of my neck. It stands up. And that's the role reversal. And people will say, oh, we've reversed roles. And if you go in thinking that you've reversed roles, stop and think about how you would feel if your daughter or son started talking to you as if they were the parent. It's offensive, but yes, it's used because no one's really talking about the new role that you're going to be taking on. So in the absence of a defined new role, they resort back to, oh, I just become a parent to my parents. So you're really developing a new role. And in that new role, it's more of a collaborative role as opposed to a telling my parent what to do.
Yeah, that is so true. I hear oftentimes people saying, when I start taking care of my parents, I'm going to, make up for the time that they did this to me or they did that to me. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. No way. Think about that. Would you want that happening to you and your all those things that you thought you were making the right decision for your child, for them to be holding it against you? So that's a really good thing to keep in mind is that, one, as we get older, I mean, no matter what age you are, as you get older, it takes longer to process things, right? And change is always hard, no matter what age you are. So easing into it slowly, if you can. Sometimes, because of illness or whatever, you can't. But even starting those conversations before there is even a need, I think is really important. So how would you then handle a parent that appears to be experiencing memory loss or refuses to deal with it or acknowledge that they need help?
So keep in mind that I'm going to be giving possibilities and strategies that may or may not work for everybody. And the true hallmark of taking care of your parent is what one person does for their parent might not work with yours. So with somebody with a memory impairment, the rule of thumb most of the time is they're going to say no to something that needs to happen. And if you back up and think about it, if you're losing your memory and someone's communicating to you that you need to live somewhere else, when you know your environment, you don't know a new environment, they're going to say no because they know where they are. And
Yeah.
it's scary to think of being in someplace new. The other is with a memory impairment, they may not be hearing what you're saying correctly, or they might not be able to process it. So and with dementia, some of the strategies are a little bit different than if they're not memory impaired. Obviously, if you have somebody with a memory impairment and they're doing something unsafe, they're driving it, you're going to have to put some strategies in place to protect them. And then how you go about it can oftentimes result in, and I'll say lying, telling little fiblets, managing the truth somewhat. Because remember, when you have a parent with a memory impairment, your number one goal is preserving their autonomy, their dignity, their sense of themselves, and their peace of mind. So you may have to manage the truth a little bit to preserve their peace of mind and to keep their anxiety down.
If you're looking to help keep your brain healthy, Neura's EHT Brain Formula's got you covered. It was developed after 20 years of research by Dr. Jeffrey Stock, a Princeton University professor. EHT is decaffeinated. It focuses on B vitamins to sustain and increase energy. It also is BSCG certified, and it really helps to keep the neuronal connections in your brain healthy, helping you with focus and clarity, memory and recall, and really helping to rebuild those neuronal connections that can break down with age or injury. Now back to the show.
If your parent doesn't have a memory impairment and they need help, ideally, and it doesn't always happen this way, you will have asked questions and kind of started a little bit of a conversation before there's ever any problem. Questions like, what would you want me to do for you if you needed help? What are some mistakes, Mom, that you don't want me to make? If you're in the hot, like asking open-ended questions, and sometimes you can get your foot in the door by them telling you about maybe a friend of theirs that went into a rehab facility, and you can enter into the conversation that way. Well, what if it happened to you? What would you want me to do? If you haven't done that, and many people haven't, and you're just beginning, you're going to be talking to them slower and asking a lot of questions and making suggestions and asking for their reaction to it. And if you can afford it, there is a profession out there called care management. The Aging Life Care Association is a great website, aginglifecare.org, where we get hired to be an objective third party in managing a conversation to make what I would call a transition. And transition might be home with a little bit of home care. It might be going to a daycare. It might be, having meals brought in. It might be walking the dog for them. Something very simple, very small, but just a beginning. So sometimes that helps. Or you might have somebody from your temple. You might have somebody from your church. There might be a trusted advisor in there that you could bring in to help have that conversation. In the absence of that, I usually like to pick the sibling or the relative that the person seems to listen to the most for whatever reason. I was that for my dad. He, for whatever reason, listened to me when he had to make decisions. With my mom, it was my sister.
Interesting.
And but you have to pay attention, and you also have to put your ego down. Sometimes
That's a big one. That's a big one. Not letting your ego or theirs get in the way, and and not reacting when it is their ego that comes up, and trying to put yourself in their shoes where you're losing control of things that you typically have control over. So, kind of thinking about that train of thought, what do you do, or how do you know when a parent might be better off in a community versus being at home? How would you
so.
suggest we kind of like mark that and maybe proceed with caution?
Yeah, it's a scary topic, and I And along with that, I don't like to see or recommend that families talk to their parents about moving into a community until they know kind of what their finances are. And that can be a really tricky conversation to bring up. You could be talking about moving to a community. I had a woman that had, I'm going to say millions of dollars, millions. And she was very reluctant to move her husband into a community because she was afraid of running out of money. And it was never going to happen. So one, you want to know what the finances are. Two, most older adults are afraid of running out of money before they die. It's scary after you spent your entire life building up your bank balance. Now you're seeing it go down, even though it's what you saved for. So you want to, one, know what the finances are. Two, know how they are and what they do to manage the anxiety around it. And then what I say is the rule of thumb at home. Generally speaking, if you're paying for care 10 to 12 hours a day times 30 days, that amount of money is equivalent to moving to an assisted living facility. Yeah. So if you're thinking about when do I move mom or dad, if they're working in budget with 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day of home care, and they go over that, then you know that it's going to be more expensive. So the cost benefit is then it's time to move to a community. The other decision maker, and I'm not for facilities or against them. You know, I love working with the older adult, but I have had this experience, particularly when there's a memory impairment, where they do better moving into a community. Somebody with a memory impairment needs to have lots of outlets to tell the same story over and over, or they need lots of outlets to be able to wander uninhibited, wander without any restrictions. And so sometimes it's better for I'm working with a couple right now where the wife, the husband needs assisted living and the wife doesn't want him to go. And she's saying it's because of him, but she's now coming to terms with it's really about her. She feels guilty. She feels wrong. She's falling down on her job. And now she's trying to emotionally get to a place where she can see that it's really going to be better for him.
So, listeners, as you can tell, this is a subject that you want to start the conversation early, well before it's really needed. And the more you can talk about it, the better the transition will be. Amy has had such great content here to share with all of you, but as I said, it's the start of the conversation. So as we progress through the months, I'm sure we'll be hearing lots more. So be sure to tune in and think about what one thing are you going to take from today's episode and immediately put into place. Are you going to start that conversation? We'd love to hear about it.
Do you think one of the biggest advantages to aging is all the knowledge we gain along the way? Me too. What did you learn today? Share with me in my Facebook group with the same name as this podcast, Advantages to Aging. Now hit subscribe so you don't miss all the tips to come in future episodes.